Hi, everyone, and welcome to our second CCS webinar of the day, Resiliency through CTV, Why the Retail Revolution Will Be Televised. I'm Alicia Esposito, VP of Content for Retail Touchpoints, and I'm thrilled to be with you for this session where we'll dig into new trends and best practices in the emerging and evolving world of CTV advertising. For those of you watching right now who are relatively new to Retail Touchpoints and CCS, welcome. It's great to have you. When this session is over, I encourage you to join our community. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, and of course, check out all of the great content and resources we have on retailtouchpoints.com. We have everything from the latest and greatest breaking news to timely trend pieces and success stories, as well as detailed benchmark research reports, videos, podcasts, and even more webinars like this one. To make things a bit easier, I encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter so you can get the latest news and content delivered right to your inbox several times a week. And if you didn't know, we also do events beyond our digital content. Our Retail Innovation Conference and Expo is headed back to Chicago for 3 jam-packed days of content, networking, and exploration. That's right, it's the destination where you can see what's next in connected commerce, but also experience it firsthand. Go to rice.events and see why execs from Dollar General, Coach, Walmart, Liquid Death, General Mills, Brookfield Properties, and so many more brands across the retail realm are joining us this June in Chicago. Before we dig into the content today, I just want to give everyone a quick lay of the land of the platform we're using. The On24 console basically has everything you need to have a great experience, not just for the session, but for the entire series. The great thing about On24 in particular is that you can completely customize your experience. So you can move and resize windows, you can make the videos smaller or the slides smaller, depending on your preferences. And you also have a few different interactive tools to make the experience a little more enhanced. So a quick few things to call out here. We have our media player button for your video and volume controls. We have a resource list where you can get some more content and resources from our friends at Mountain. You can learn more and access all of the other sessions taking place during CCS this week. And you have a Q&A box. So we will have Q&A at the end. We encourage you to submit questions as they come to mind, though, because there is a lot of content we'll be getting into. And it also allows us to track questions. So if for some reason we run out of time, we'll be able to go back to your question, follow up with you, and make sure that those questions get answered. Perhaps most importantly, at least for me and my team, is the survey icon. So you can click that at any time during your experience and share your feedback with us. It can be about the content, the platform, the overall experience, the series, whatever strikes your fancy, whatever's on your mind, we want to hear from you. Our goal is to make sure that the content and overall series like CCS are valuable, are relevant. So again, before you leave this session today, please, please, please share your feedback. And of course, if for any reason you have a question that I did not help address, or if anything comes up over the course of the webinar and you need some help, of course, press that help icon for further guidance. All right, now I'm really excited to kick things off, but first I'm going to share a little bit about our speaker today, Oliver Embry, who leads advertising product innovation at Mountain. He works closely with the product and customer teams to ensure that they're developing meaningful solutions that will resonate with current and future customers. Prior to Mountain, Oliver founded Zabonic Consulting, a retail consultancy focused on developing and establishing new brand and commercial channels for its clients. Prior to that, Oliver worked at Adidas in online and offline retail strategy for the brands. All right, without further ado, Oliver, welcome. It is so great to have you. Looking forward to digging in.
Alicia, thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for the time. As you mentioned, it's I'm always excited to be a part of a retail focused group, given my background at Adidas and our focus sort of, or my focus from a product development perspective is always putting my retail hat on and thinking about what would be breakthrough technology that would have made me as a customer want to sign on the dotted line for our products and innovations. As you mentioned today, resilience through CTV, why the retail revolution will be televised, and through these opportunities, where are there ways in which you could leverage this compelling and meaningful channel to drive performance for your brand and your retail company. And the big takeaway that I want you all to leave as we go through this presentation, this journey, is there are more challenges ahead for the retail industry, but prior to with other sort of challenges and sort of trough points, this time you can prepare yourself for success based upon kind of developing meaningful and nimble strategies. And just to walk through our agenda and show you where we are now and where we're going, in our conversation today. The challenges and opportunities facing, we'll go through sort of the challenges and opportunities facing retail brands in 2023 and beyond. Last year is not the same as this year, and there's opportunities that we can talk through that will allow you to prepare yourselves for success. What are some of those best practices and recession-proof strategies that you can start with today that can drive meaningful performance for your company? And then we'll talk through sort of your first-party data. How are you engaging with customers? What are you collecting? How are you potentially slicing that to make it value add for some of your marketing mix and your channel strategies in particular? And then what are some compelling tools that you can leverage to really lean into this new medium of CTV that's able to kind of mix some best practices of some of the performance and brand channels that you've leveraged previously and that you're bringing to life currently. If you're a retailer, it's been a challenging couple of years. From some of these unexpected challenges of COVID and market conditions that have all sort of allowed or sort of empowered consumers to change their behaviors. The ways in which consumers shop, the ways in which consumers engage with their brands is wildly different now than it was 3 years ago. And it'll be wildly different in 3 years than it is now. And I think it's important, to realize that, developing sort of nimble strategies that build into that is paramount in terms of being able to kind of lean into some of these announced and unannounced challenges that have taken shape. And things we've made it through a wave of challenges over the past couple of years. But I even think about as I was preparing for this presentation and how things have evolved given some of the banking uncertainties that were a week ago that you wouldn't have foreseen. And obviously some of the ongoing supply chain challenges that are trickle down from just environmental greater impact to businesses. And as I said, it's important to make sure that you're creating strategies that can lean into some of these moments and really not just be sort of set in stone, but can read and react to what's taking shape maybe in the economy at large and maybe in your particular part of the retail industry in particular. And as I mentioned, sort of consumer behavior, it's more important now than ever to recognize ways in which customers want to engage with your channels and your brands, rather than maybe creating strategies that are sort of a one-way street towards the ways in which you might want to engage with them. And as you said, getting ready for what's in store. I've already said, mentioned this in the past couple slides, but really, leaning into an agile and creative, agile strategy and agile creative approach. I like to say, you now have to meet the customer where they are, rather than drive them to where you are. I think about some of the success stories of the COVID environment. It was brands that were able to recognize, the customer didn't necessarily need to, purchase product from you while they were maybe sitting on their couch, during COVID. But you still wanted to engage with them, and you had to figure out ways in which they might want to engage with your brand and your customer. And really leaning into what we're calling, performance marketing mindset, being able to nimbly, iterate and optimize your strategies and your campaigns based upon what's happening maybe macro at large in some of these environments, but also on a micro level, how are customers engaging with your site? How are they being driven there? What opportunities are there to leverage both some of those macro and micro conditions to really develop that performance marketing mindset that allows you to optimize over time and realize that your strategies are a living, breathing organism. So, given, that lay of the land and where things are and where things are going, how can you build and implement some of these recession-proof strategies and be able to, as I said, react to the moments that are taking shape, the moments that you can control, and the moments that are out of your control, to maintain those meaningful relationships with your customers. And I say, best practice number one is, match messaging with consumer behavior. As you mentioned, probably over the past couple of years, there have been some, downtimes when maybe your customers might be a little bit more price sensitive. Are you able to add in some messaging that might change the nuance of a piece of creative, whether or not it's in a social channel or in a CTV channel, or in a search channel, to be able to understand some of that price sensitivity? Or is it a time in which maybe your product, there might not be as much of an opportunity to drive sales because of a supply chain challenge, but how do you maybe add in a brand message that might make sense there? And I think what you can do is being able to think about how improving that messaging, from day to day or from, season to season, actually increases sort of the lifetime value of some of the creative that you might develop for some of those channels. Instead of maybe becoming, stale and dated because it wasn't contextually relevant, being able to, add a layer of messaging to a brand campaign that might speak to driving sales for a certain franchise of a product or a certain category line can absolutely increase the lifetime value of it and also make it more contextually relevant, which can drive some of that performance back for when you might, in previous times, not been able to make those nimble adjustments that we spoke to. Best practice number two, focus on digital. I like to say that a company's, e-commerce and app channels, that's sort of the modern day, digital flagship store. So that's the way that your presence is you're going to be best in class, whether or not it's in the app and you're maybe looking to showcase products, or maybe it's on your online site and you're looking to storytell around a new brand ambassador or a new way in which you've developed a product. Really think about the connectivity points between maybe your own social channels, your e-commerce channels, and your app channels are all sort of your flagship network store of sort of your best in class environment to be able to develop that storytelling. And obviously, as technologies and have improved, from fulfillment technologies, drop ship and buy online, pick up in store, to obviously same day shipping. Online and online shopping has become more presence and will grow and grow over time. And so it's really important to think about your flagship stores of the future are your digital footprint, and being able to reach customers across the globe in a meaningful fashion has never been easier from that standpoint. Instead of having to maybe drive them to your store on Fifth Avenue or a store in a certain market that you care about, that sort of market, that sort of ecosystem becomes sort of your modern day flagship. And it's important to think about as you relate some of your online, how do you drive traffic to your online channels and what that actually means. And best practice number three is maintain ad spend. I think in a lot of cases, especially in previous world, in a more linear TV fashion, your TV budgets were going to be some of the first that might be slashed. And even if you trickle down more so to performance-oriented channels, that might be the case as well. But what we see in Mountain, and especially in the connected TV space, is that maintaining that ad spend actually is more beneficial and actually can make your campaigns cheaper, because over time, instead of like starting from if turning on a campaign and then turning it off and then starting the next one from a standing stop, those campaigns can be optimized over time. It can be optimized to reach the customers in the right way through messaging. It can be optimized in ways in which to target the right audiences and target the right geos. So it's actually important to kind of maintain, just like you might in a social environment, a paid social environment, or paid performance, in a paid search environment, being able to kind of treat connected TV as sort of an always-on channel is quite beneficial when it comes to maintaining ad spend and what that does from a performance standpoint, instead of sort of turning on or turning off the light, and what that might be able to do to drive long-term relationships, but also with your customers, but also long-term performance for your company. And as you mentioned, agile and D2C native brands, they'd already had sort of, focus or customer engagement initiatives. And, being able to have some of those direct relationships with customers and not necessarily direct, but also consistent. They referred to much, smaller percentage of sales declines in relation to those that maybe didn't necessarily have as meaningful connectivity to their customers. So how does that all tie together in terms of kind of meaningful connectivity with your customers? I think one of the most important things a brand or a retailer can do is leveraging your in-house and first-party data. I treat it as sort of that's your ball of clay in terms of how you have customer connectivity. You can kind of slice it and dice it in the way that makes sense for your key performance indicators, whether or not it's engagement on site that might have to do with a loyalty program, or it's the amount in a gift card that you could sort of delineate from that as well to kind of create segmented campaigns based upon those that may have a $100 gift card. You might want to show them a certain threshold of products versus those in segmented that might have a $200 or $250 redemption. And I think what's so powerful here is this is the way in which you can kind of build direct relationships with your customers. They're not necessarily data points; they're engagement points. Don't necessarily think of it in like completely in a transactional nature, because there's a lot of ways in which you can build rich engagement points around your first-party data. I take the example of the time on site or pages that are viewed. The more time that if you're able to collect information on sort of time on site or time in app, you can really and behavior around that, you can really create some compelling segments of your first-party data that see your high-value customers versus those that you're maybe trying to get a little bit further down the purchase and intent funnel. Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think it's key to to think about like when you're creating that sort of sales funnel. It starts at all sorts of levels of engagement. I think it's important to really segment out your customers that have some familiarity with you from those that do, because you can sort of avoid some of those introductory aspects to it in terms of letting them know about like what your brand is about or what your retailer is about and what that story might be, and then focus more so down that funnel towards areas in which they've obviously shown higher intent, whether or not it's putting products in the basket, or it's being able to sign up for an email listserv for you all that's like a focus on a specific category. Being able to kind of produce more customized and targeted campaigns around that with those customers that already have familiarity with it makes it so you don't have to start from a standing start with all those customers, just like I mentioned with some of your campaigns in prior in a few slides prior. And then, yeah, that all gets back to, as you go further down the purchase funnel, being able to think about like sort of a delineation between prospecting and retargeting campaigns. I think about going back to our example and trying to create an analogy to retail or offline retail. It's a lot easier for a customer to go to your site than it is to go to your store, and because of that, your conversion point or your conversion percentage in store will be significantly higher because someone's going out of their way to potentially purchase a product from in store. But online, it's so easy to be able to add a product in to your cart or maybe search for it, but you still have to have that commitment to buy. And they could easily just kind of leave the pages as they could just as easily leave the page as they were to enter it. And so being able to have really compelling retargeting campaigns that are based on some of that intent, where someone might have not necessarily gone over the hurdle to be a purchaser, is really impactful to be able to remind them of their engagement with you and why they might have come to your site in the first place. And I want to speak to a lot of the opportunities we were talking about from a channel strategy. One of the biggest challenges is creative, is the cost and also the hurdle to creative. There's ways in which we could you could kind of maybe cut costs from maybe potentially from a spend standpoint or from audiences that you're reaching. But if you cut corners around creative, it really can kind of come back to bite you, because you're going to be maybe potentially dilutive to your brand and be able to not necessarily showcase yourself well in the market and the environment. And we see that the most in CTV. Obviously, we're in a highly visible medium where you're showcasing your brand on large screens and in large environments, and so the risk to that is even higher to be able to to have those challenges. And so I think it's super important to be able to kind of invest in that, even when there is down markets, because being able to have ways in which you can mix up your creative and maybe show some A/B testing, or be able to show to different markets and different segments, avoid some of the creative fatigue that you see. I'm sure we've all been exposed to seeing the same ad over and over again, which is obviously dilutive and is definitely not driving greater performance for your customers. And being able to even in a down market, focus on creative as I said, good ideas aren't free, but we need to be able to find ways in which you can show those in a meaningful way that drives performance. And yeah, because this has come up a lot with us. We're working with a number of advertisers who it's their first time that they've ever been on TV, and in a linear world, they would have never dreamt to be on TV because it was not a targeted solution. It was quite expensive. The creative costs were expensive, and so we've developed solutions towards that, and we've built solutions that empower any customer of any size or any shape to be able to advertise and be always on with their connected television. Our ambition is to create a self-service platform that allows any advertiser, any size, to kind of create a CTV campaign with one click against any key performance indicator they care about. And going back to what we were just talking about, creative is a huge friction point to it. So we've developed a couple of solutions that have helped alleviate that, and that have really kind of helped us grow along with our customers and allow them to kind of use connected TV as a real growth engine for them. First being a company, QuickFrame. QuickFrame by Mountain is our product. That's essentially a marketplace for creative across CTV, across social, across any other channels that you might want to think. And essentially, it's a marketplace that allows brands to brief in a project and then be able to work with a network of creators that creates an output that is quality and that can drive performance across CTV being the hero asset, but then other channels being able to be worked with as well. And then last year we launched a product called Creative as a Subscription. So this allows customers to have refreshes of their creative if they're advertising consistently on our platform. Going back to, we've seen creative being one of the greater friction points in terms of turning CTV into an always-on medium. And so offering this allows customers to kind of, as we like to say, like focus on their business, and then we can drive meaningful growth for their business by being able to provide the creative that sort of powers some of these connected TV campaigns and then drives them back to their site or their app or wherever they might want their traffic to be driven. And it all goes back to, as you mentioned, sort of performance. And this is how to make every day Black Friday. And I think one of the cool things about the CTV world is you can sort of meld, you could mix sort of the best of both worlds of Black Friday and Super Bowl Sunday to drive performance. You could take, as they're saying that connected TV is sort of taking a television from an upper funnel medium to a lower funnel exercise. And so you can drive sales and drive growth like you might do on a Black Friday, but in a highly visible and highly engaged way, like you might see on a Super Bowl Sunday, but not at the same cost. So really think it's compelling from that standpoint in terms of being able to drive performance outcomes, but in a highly visible medium, which obviously will drive growth for you all and be able to create meaningful relationships with your customers. And just as you're evaluating partners across the board in the advertising landscape, there's obviously many to evaluate and many to be able to consider. Just wanted to kind of run through a quick checklist of maybe aspects or qualities that you should be considering. So you want to make sure that there's ad delivery on premium inventory through a PMP or a private marketplace deal. You want the ability to have sort of cross-channel advertising to be able to, drive connectivity between social and CTV and other performance channels. We want to be able to have targeting for both first-party data that we spoke to and talked about how rich that was, and third-party targeting through audiences, in addition to be able to leverage your own CRM list to upload and be able to match and connect, your customers that you have. You have that information on, in addition to the first and third party targeting. Imagine sort of retargeting capabilities. So being able to mix prospecting and retargeting to measure the success of kind of how you're able to engage with customers who are already familiar with your brand. Actionable, customizable, and transparent insights. This all goes back to the ability to kind of be nimble and agile with your campaigns. You want to be able to, in a moment's notice, adjust your audiences or adjust your targeting, since your campaigns are a living, breathing organism that you can, instead of a set it and forget it model. The ability to kind of easily upload information about that you already have on your customers from, data, targeting, and optimization, and being able to kind of work towards that for, a goal that is your sort of KPI, whether it's sales or site visits, but want to be able to kind of have easy optimizations towards that. And then also sort of auto, as you mentioned, sort of auto optimization to like ensure that you're delivering towards the best return on investment possible with the KPI that you care about. You want to make sure that there's an ability to not just maybe measure towards a sales goal, but anything that might be of value to you. We work with a number of B2B brands now, and their sort of landscape is quite different than a retailer, and what their KPIs are, and want to make sure that we can adjust that accordingly. And the ability to run multiple tests and campaigns at once and concurrently to go back to the idea that this is living and breathing, and we want to make sure that we could swap in creative or swap out creative if the messaging isn't working or if one's performing better than the other. And then, after, is there ability to kind of understand the impact of that ad, within an attribution window that you define. So for some advertisers, it might be a 7-day window. For some, it might be 14. Some, it might be 21. And are we able to see whether or not, after there's been exposure to a social ad, a connected TV ad, any other ad, that there is ability to connect the dots between that exposure and any action that might take place from there. And just wanted to kind of speak to, I know we created a checklist and wanted to, without that, kind of speak to some aspects of it that we, Mountain, as sort of a self-service connected TV ad technology platform, can serve to, and be able to kind of, understand like what aspects of that checklist we aspire towards, and that we're able to meet customers' needs on. First is, and I mentioned this a little bit, but living room quality. We only, a customer's first point of touch with a Mountain campaign will always be on a large device. So only on a TV screen, not on a tablet or not on a computer, because we recognize that that's where we're going to have the greatest impact, and that's where there's going to be the greatest performance. And then from that standpoint, there's always, when you're watching on a large screen, you're going to have a secondary screen probably next to you or nearby. So to be able to create that red thread is even more meaningful from if we're able to kind of make that first impression be on a living room quality or large form TV. Cross device verified visits. So being able to, as alluded to a little bit, but being able to measure whether or not if you were exposed and you did view through an entire Mountain CTV ad on a living room quality television, on commercial, within that same household, are we able to see whether or not you went on one of your other devices, the computer, the tablet, you name it, and visited that site for that customer. We have great Google Analytics integration, so being able to take some of that work that you're probably already doing in other areas with GA, and actually being able to integrate it into some of the work that we're and campaigns that we're running, so you could see this side by side with some of the other performance campaigns that you're developing. And yeah, I mean, performance optimization. We are everything we're doing is through a performance lens. You're going to come to Mountain to say, we really care about this key performance indicator, and our campaigns over time are going to optimize against what that looks like. And yeah, the fully sort of customizable dashboards that allow you to really see reporting and views that make sense to you all, and make sense to you as an advertiser. And be able to as well look at A/B tests. We're able to A/B test across the board in terms of if you have a hypothesis that we have around creative, around maybe some weather, environmental creative that you want to see. Maybe it's raining versus sun versus it's snowing in a piece of creative. We could run those two in terms of environments to see what performs better than the other. And yeah, going back to a little bit of the dashboards, but transparent reporting that shows how we're able to actually drive some of these visits to your site just from our connected TV campaigns, and not from not taking credit for anything that wasn't attributed to what we were running for you all as a customer. And then we part of our creative team modeled this after, called fast-vertising mentality. And so we're really being, as I mentioned earlier, we're really being nimble with our campaigns, and recognizing that TV campaigns are a living, breathing organism in terms of being able to optimize the creative, optimize the campaign setup, optimize the audiences in a way in which we can get things to market and adjust them accordingly, to, as I said, meet customers where they are, rather than drive them to where you are. I know we covered a ton today, so I wanted to kind of tie a bow on it back to like what we said the agenda was going to be at the start. 2023 holds many challenges, but if you have the right strategies and have the right nimble strategies in place, you can react to these moments in a way that you can capture growth in a compelling way, and in a way in which you might not have been able to do in the past. First party data, as you said, that direct relationship with your customers, and these are engagement points, not necessarily data points. They're easy to collect, easy to implement, and are also highly valuable in terms of maintaining that direct relationship with your customers. CTV is a very different tool than the linear TV was, in terms of being financially friendly, cost effective, as well as being able to optimize over time so that these campaigns actually become cheaper if you're able to set them in an always-on fashion, and run them against the KPI that you care about. And then, not all CTV advertising solutions are created equal, but if you're able to evaluate the ones that sort of sit within your wheelhouse and are measuring against the KPIs that you care about, you can maximize that platform for this year and beyond any challenges that you might have. So I just want to thank everyone for their time and energy, and really looking forward to the next time we get to connect with the Retail Touchpoints team.
Thanks so much, Oliver. Always a pleasure getting to hear, all of the work that your team is doing, and just what you're seeing in the marketplace. Like, I know on our side, we've been covering a lot in the marketing and advertising world, all of the shifts in budgets, all of the pressure that marketing and advertising teams are feeling to prove the performance and the impact of their efforts, but also ensure that they are, reaching consumers in a authentic way, but also that they're hitting all of those key touch points, right? So I think a lot of your content and your insight really reflects a lot of what we're seeing in the marketplace as well. So, and I appreciated your emphasis on data-driven, agility and a lot of those topics that we've been hearing a lot about. So I do want to make sure we have some time to hit on some questions. We've got like 10 minutes or so. So okay, I'm gonna ask this question because it's kind of the big elephant in the room. Is CTV expensive, and can you explain why it's worth investing in, especially if it's a new ad channel right now? So how can you break down, I guess, the cost versus the benefits of an investment?
It's a great question. Yeah, no, it's CTV. I mean, if you think about in relation to the cost of producing and advertising on a linear channel 5 years ago, it is incrementally and exponentially cheaper than it was. We have developed some products I mentioned around creative as a subscription and our quick pay marketplace that are really driving down some of the barriers to entry, especially around creative. And so it is not expensive. I mean, we work with advertisers, big and small, from those that advertise for a handful of thousands of dollars a month to those that advertise for $1 million a month. And they're all using our platform in very similar ways. And the key aspect of it is that, and the key thread is that we're advertising against the key performance indicator that they care about. And for a lot of them, from big to small, it might be sales, but at the same time, there could be an aspect that you're more focused on when it comes to growth from a performance side that we could certainly optimize against. So, and I think that's the big part of it, is that we can optimize these campaigns over time, and that if you treat CTV like it is an always on channel, like you might do with your social campaigns or your Google campaigns, we can actually drive down some of that costs. And so you're essentially, plowing back money into campaigns based upon the success and sales that we're driving with them.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that notion of, CTV being an ongoing or living, breathing organism, as you noted earlier in your session, I think that's kind of the key there. It's not something that you just set it and step away and just wait for things to happen, which I guess kind of connects to this next question. Again, that mention of fast advertising and agility as, a core to success here. Can you explain more about swapping out CTV creative to offer new deals, discounts, or promotions? What does that look like in terms of like applying that?
Sure. I'll kind of put it into two parts. And just, a lot of our campaigns, as I said, sort of that living room quality is the first touch where they're seeing that CTV ad, but we also allow customers to run extension to that as well, as we call multi-touch, which would be display ads that would sort of remind customers of where they had maybe seen our campaign, or maybe where they had been exposed or engaged with that brand. And yeah, within a matter of 24 hours or so, we could upload and adjust the creative and the messaging with you all in a way in which across both the CTV landscape for the creative as well as for the display creative, in a matter of moments within our UI. So you're able to kind of upload that and optimize against the KPI that we spoke to. But from that creative standpoint, you could adjust some of that text and that messaging that might overlay on top of the ad to provide maybe a sale or a discount that you spoke to, and have that within the day be able to be uploaded to adjust to that. And I love to use the Black Friday week as an example. You might on a Black Friday, being able to speak to some sale. And then, a couple of days later on Cyber Monday, you might want to speak to something totally different. And so within the span of a week, we could, change the nature and sort of messaging of your connected TV and multi-touch campaign to meet your messaging and meet your needs as a customer.
Awesome. Super helpful. This is interesting. Why should a smaller or local retailer opt for CTV? Is there a use case or value prop for those guys in particular?
Absolutely. I mean, I think back, if you were a local or small advertiser 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you were told that you could advertise nationally on TV, you would have thought that would be really expensive and not feasible. And we have a small we have small advertisers that advertise for a couple, for a handful of $1,000s a month, that we have performed as well, if not better, than some of their other performance channels, and really opened up new audiences and new addressable markets for it. I think about potentially a local, let's say a local sandal business, that maybe potentially only sold to a certain geo because of maybe their reach on audio, or maybe it was on billboard, or it was in maybe the local paper. Now we could maybe potentially take those dollars that might have gone towards that and actually find them, help them find, sandal aficionados or sandal lovers across the US, and actually drive performance that could actually maybe help them scale from a new level of growth that they might not have been able to achieve in TV, and then maybe other traditional mediums that they'd seen before.
Love that. Really good example. And I think there could be a lot of creative potential there, depending on the brand category or their target customer, right? There could be a lot of fun stuff going on there.
Absolutely, yeah. Going back to the nimbleness of the messaging, as well as the localization that you could apply to some of that messaging as well.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let me do a quick time check. All right, I think we have time. Where's clock? Okay, yeah, we have time for one more. And there was a really good closeout question. Okay, perfect way to close this up. So let's close it with some advice, right? I think you provide a lot of great pointers throughout the conversation, but what advice do you have for a brand or retailer that is just starting off in CTV and they're trying to keep up with ad demand, they're trying to get their strategy off the ground? Any pointers?
Yeah, I'll use sort of a pointer that I even applied to our team. Like we really try to lean into like a minimum viable test approach with all we're doing. So when I come to our sort of product innovation, I'm always trying to see if things perform. And in this standpoint, I want to see if maybe this new test or hypothesis we have will work for 1 to 3 advertisers for 30 to 45 days, and go from there. So I would really kind of treat it as a minimum viable test, and be open to how ways in which you could adjust and iterate that test to meet the KPIs that you care about. So don't think of it as sort of a daunting thing where you have to figure out the audiences and figure out maybe some of the creative optimization. Leave that to the folks at a company like Mountain to be able to kind of be your shepherd through that. But really focus on let's see this as a minimum viable test approach, and then let's grow it and grow it and grow it if we're happy with the results.
Like that. Definitely a big theme, I think, in a lot of our coverage recently around marketing and advertising, and, finding those small focused ways to test, iterate, and improve. It's definitely interesting to see how data is being used to drive those better creative decisions, refine investments. It's definitely a listen, learn, and improve sort of approach. So, Oliver, really appreciate you taking the time. Always a pleasure to hear your thoughts on what's happening in this really interesting space. I mean, I think the way that creative and data and so many other components come together to drive strategy is really fascinating. So thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you, Alicia, and look forward to talking to you soon, and appreciate the time.
Awesome. And to all of you, if you had any follow-up questions for Oliver, or we did not get to your question and you submitted it, again, don't panic. We'll make sure our team follows up with you directly. We'll connect you to Oliver or someone else from the Mountain team. We'll make sure those follow-up conversations are had, because it is a very interesting topic. That is it for this session, but we have one more coming up for you today, featuring yours truly and our editor, Adam Blair. We're actually going to be offering a first look at some of the data and takeaways from our latest store design and experience survey. There's actually some really interesting nuggets in there. So be sure to join us for that. It will begin at 2 p.m. Eastern today. And of course, if you want more information about this session coming up in a little bit, or want to see what else is coming down the pike the rest of this week, be sure to go to the URL on the screen right now. That will give you the full lineup of all of the other sessions coming up, and will also allow you to go back to the content on demand. That's it for now, everyone. Thanks again so much. We will see you in a little bit. Take care.